you want to check us out on all of our social media platforms, on Twitter at tinfoilhatcast, reddit.com/r/tinfoilhatshow,
On Instagram at tinfoilhatpod.
or allcomedyt-shirts.com.
Email us at tinfoilhatpod@gmail.com.
Because if you want Daddy to get mad, Daddy's going to get mad. Get mad. Why is this a thing?
Here we go again.
Tinfoil hat.
For the children, we teach the children. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And welcome to Tinfoil Hat, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. What a wonderful week to be alive. It's an amazing time in the world of conspiracies. Things are moving, things are popping. We're excited to announce that I keep trying to get the date. They haven't told me excuse me, I'm trying to get the exact time. It's going to look like it's 3 or 4 o'clock for Tinfoil Hat live at Skankfest this Sunday coming out. So if you're in New York, you're in the New York area, hey, Toronto, come get weird, dog. It's not that far of a drive. That's right. So go to, what is that,
NYC.com.
Grab your tickets now. I don't know how big the room is going to be. So I hope you guys can come have fun. It's going to be with the very hilarious, you can see is on Netflix 15-minute special, Tim Dillon from Tim Dillon's Going to Hell. So that is great. Guys, on the Patreon, we just cranked out 2. We're about to put 2 out. I know you didn't get one last week. It was 4th of July weekend, and everybody was kind of doing their own thing. So you will get 2 this week, 2 great ones. One in the smothering heat, and the other one last night with our good friend, George Kimmel. So that will be available. And guys, that's a great way to support the show. Now, we just got a 500 subscriber alert, which is a big thing that Ryan's excited about.
Oh, man.
Okay, Ryan made a deal with you guys. If we got the 500 subscribers, Ryan would be into furries. He would become a furry. We're going to let you pick which animal, too.
Mm-hmm.
I want, what would you want? Wolverine, maybe? Or
I want a red panda. I mean, I think it goes with who I am internally. But
red panda would be interesting. Can you do why does it always seem like they're woodland animals?
We can go weird. I mean, I'm down to be
Porcupine?
an iguana.
Can you go porcupine?
I think you have to be furry. Maybe we could find a furry reptilian.
All right, man. So we're gonna let you not only he's gonna do it, but you're gonna pick the character that goes to one of these conventions and see him get weird. And if we're lucky, it will stick with him, and that will be his new lifestyle. So go to that, and then So that's the shirts. The shirts.
Check out the shirts, guys.
Check out the shirts real quick. Super excited. So many tinfoil hat shirts. We got brand new ones coming out, and it's a great way to support the show. Again, without you guys, we'd be nervous. Obviously, the show is growing because yesterday Alex Jones mentioned our tour. I was talking about Eddie Bravo. He's got a very successful tour, like the Tinfoil Hat Comedy. So we're on the radar. So I want to welcome all the new NSA, CIA, and FBI agents who are now listening. Please subscribe. I know you're part of the system, but just give us 5 stars if you could on the internet. That would be nice of you. I know you're not all bad people. Some of you guys are good guys working for the Alliance. We love you. You black hats, we're watching, okay? You're watching us. We're watching you, okay? Joining us in studio, very excited to have him on the show. He is a friend of mine for a very long time. It's a very interesting thing where sometimes you're interacting all the time, and then just life happens, and you go one way, I go one way, and through the magic of Facebook, we stay in touch. And I don't know why I thought of you, but you had contacted me about something, and then I kind of started talking to him about his new cool podcast, and it is called Money and Fear, and it's on the Newsbud website. I believe that's newsbud.com. And I mean, dude, you're constantly seeing independent news being demonized. And it's like the amount of work it takes to put out this information and to just want to BS people is unbelievable to me. It's like, what is the rational idea behind that? Why would they lie? Why would they work so hard? Look at this website, how hard they work on getting out the truth. These people on Newsbuds are laying their lives on the line to get you the truth. So you should go and support them. So I'm proud to bring on my good friend from the podcast Money and Fear on the Newsbud Network. Please welcome my good friend, Pye Ian.
Pye Ian.
Pye Ian.
Yep.
Why did I fuck that up, dude?
You should be happy, man. This should be your thing. You should imagine if you had a Tonight Show, it'd be like, ladies and gentlemen, B-Rock Obama.
I went to
Booma."
it and then I'm like, say the name, and it just went.
Not a
Pye Ian,
problem.
how are you, buddy?
I'm very good. I'm to quote my friend Gazal, who you know, I'm very Ringo right now. I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, dude.
So don't worry about butcher my name as much as you want.
No, dude, and I sorry
all
about that.
apologies
Can we
to
edit
Ray
that out?
Starkey.
You got it.
You got
there
it.
you go. Tell us a little bit more about your podcast, real quick.
So great to see you, by the way. First of all, this show kicks all variety of ass.
Thank you,
And,
dude.
I haven't seen you in years, but you look
What happened?
strapping.
I
was like, I hate this guy and I want him dead.
Yeah.
By any means necessary.
So you're just like
Honestly.
everybody I've ever met in my
Praying-
light.
Praying, please, establishment with a capital E slice his throat.
Yeah. Hey, dude. He's
Killer.
predicted one of us will be murdered in 5 years. So just
And I love how you're like a thin Zach Galifianakis meets the proper Christ in Scorsese's film from 30 some odd years ago.
Hey, that's better than Charles Manson. I usually get that. So, hey.
yeah. I
Much
mean,
better
people
looking
love
than
him.
Charles
Now
Manson.
he's like, now this hair is now you're it's a production at this point. This isn't just like I woke up herbalescent shit. This
Yeah.
is like there's a makeup lady involved.
Huge-
You've worked on
huge.
putting on the headphones.
There may or may not be a hot oil treatment involved every now and then.
Huge envy factor over your hairline, by the way.
Hey, that just means
It's
you have
all
more
re-
testosterone.
Yeah, if I could come up with the means of actually implanting in the way to make it look like yours, I can retire.
We'll be there with gene therapy in about 10 years. Everyone's going to have a lion's mane. You'll see.
Are they going to work on large penises? Like I'm proud of my penis.
Why would
but-
you have to worry?
But I
Not
would
that
like.
kn-
I
not that
mean, I would
know.
like to have a wrecker.
No, they're going to decrease vagina size. The ratio
Oh, so
will
poor
still.
ladies, they just can't catch a break. Why do they got to work on it? Why can't we work on something for them?
Well, no one wants to have a cesarean, like actual birth anyway, so they're all being ripped out of the stomach. So it's natural order.
Controversy.
Hey, guys, I'm a little jealous because I'm looking here at two gentlemen with glasses,
Yes.
and I've always wanted to have glasses, but I have like eagle eye vision.
Grass is greener.
So every day I've been going outside when the sun rises, and I've been staring at the sun
What
for
are
5
you doing
minutes.
that for?
You don't want
I'm
glasses.
trying to increase the ability for me to have contact.
I've worn
Okay,
glasses
well-
since the age of 9.
Really?
I'd rather be you. Bob Nickman had a great joke back in like 89, 90. He said, I take these off, I have trouble hearing. So that's pretty much my case.
Well,
as
these guys might be for you.
That's why you got to check out our friends at Simple Contacts. That's right, Simple Contacts. There's a million things demanding your time. Contacts lenses shouldn't be one of them. Simple Contact lets you renew your prescription and reorder your contacts from anywhere in minutes. Your couch, yep, the office, yep, indeed. The doctor's office is now wherever you are. Simple Contacts vision test is self-guided and takes 5 minutes. Think of how much you save compared to making an appointment, getting to the eye doctor, taking time off, etc., etc., etc. It's designed by doctors and licensed ophthalmologists. Review every test carefully to make sure your eyes look healthy and take your vision and that your vision hasn't changed. Simple Contact has all the brands and all the types of lenses you're familiar with, so you don't have to shop around. You can just find the lenses at the best price. Simple Contact has been rated 5 stars over almost 5,000 times on the App Store. You can text with the support team and always get to speak with a person in person or on the line. No automated robot systems here. It's summer and there's no shortage of reasons to have contacts on hand. Beaches, vacations, outdoor activities, weddings. Use Simple Contact to stock up for the season. The vision test is only $20 compared to an appointment without insurance costs up to $200. The contact lenses prices are unbeatable. Standard shipping is free, and best of all, we're offering a promotion to our listeners here at Tinfoil Hat. We want you to hear this. Potential presence is what is expected versus reality. So listen, so you're thinking about getting contacts. I'm thinking because this combination is creepy to chicks.
Oh, hats and glasses?
Glasses, like I look like I should be smart, and then I'm not, and then they're like, oh, that's a bad way to go through life, blind and dumb.
Maybe you should get double monocles.
Dude, why hasn't the monocle come back?
Dude, you're bringing it back.
No, I'm not, because I'm going to Simple Contacts. That's what I'm doing. That's right. Use our offer. Get $20 off your contacts at simplecontacts.com/tinfoil20. That's right. Or just enter our code tinfoil20 at checkout. It is $20 off with our unique URL and promo code. That's right. Just say it. Tinfoil 20. That's tinfoil 20. Now, this is not a replacement for your periodical full eye exam. You got to go get tested, man. We only test that your current prescription still helps you see 20/20 and renew that prescription. We don't write completely new RXs or examine eye health. You have to get it done, guys. And that is my best chance at doing the read for Simple Contact. Back to Money and Fear. Thanks for sitting through that, my friend. I'm just killing it on these reads. I'm so proud of myself.
Gotta do business.
Hey, dude, I've been taking podcast reading classes, and they say I'm advancing to the final class. It is good. It's just me and a bunch of podcast nerds wishing one chick would come to class. That's really
That was expert.
Thank you. So get it. What is Money and Fear?
So Money and Fear is the show I do for news, but I came up with the title because for the longest time I've kind of observed status anxiety and other things through society and just really kind of philosophically question what money per se is, and not just, trite sense of like, oh, it's a numeraire and it's a store of value and it's a means of exchange, which everybody kind of knows. But really if you're looking philosophically and esoterically at emotions like fear, the Hicks and otherwise, like, there's two emotions, fear or love. Fear, money dictates fear more often than not, more effectively than practically anything else on earth, up to and including the threat of death itself.
Well, the famous philosopher who said many moons away, more money, more problems. That was Notorious B.I.G., and that is true.
He's right up there with Kierkegaard.
100%.
Kafka. Yeah,
I've seen that debate before. And people talk. People think money will solve their problems, and most time money causes way more problems.
It does. So I was just like, why? And when I mean like it causes fear more so than the threat of death itself is because not even like the hyper wealthy, but just like the upwardly mobile middle class or whatever you want to call them, like people with roughly 6-7 figure net worth would rather be dead than homeless. And if you just bluntly get them drunk or whatever, you get the honest truth out of them. They could not tolerate, and hence why everyone just kind of looks straight forward when they see homeless coming up to their windows while they're driving, is because not because they'd rather that person die, but they're deathly afraid that if they really screw up over the next quarters as far as returns, God forbid the inertia takes them to that. And that's not hyperbole, because the homeless population in the country, heck, in this city, in LA, and not it's like there's fresh homeless. There's people that are only maybe a couple of years removed from having a house, or they have multiple degrees and a coffee bean a year and a half ago. I'm sitting there talking to a lady who, according to her, and again, I don't know her from Eve, but she claims to have grown up blocks down the street in Manhattan from David Rockefeller's mega apartment, and worked for Microsoft up in Redmond as a marketing executive many moons ago. And so, without being rude, and this is just an exchange at a coffee bean, but I didn't want to ask her, like, how did you go from there to here? Like, you're literally homeless, like pushing, the conversation started because I held the door open for her, and she was kind, and I was, it's just, but she was emblematic of just, and of what I'm kind of adding up on my own. So I've ranted, I've written independently on economics. I've jumped through all these hoops as an immigrant kid, from a conservative family, where families like study hard, get the degrees, earn respect, and you'll be taken care of. And all of those rules are seemingly, most of them at least, are out the window, because we're, like frogs in a pot of boiling water, as far as like a very Stasi, East European, East German 50 years ago sense of denial. Everyone's just kind of walking around thinking things are cool.
Yeah.
With the government just literally tactically lying vis-a-vis the information that they provide.
Oh, for sure.
Which
man.
I know you guys have covered. This is a great show. You guys are providing a mobile sense of kind of perennial knowledge and university on wheels, really, in a sense. Like people could, I would surmise that millennial or otherwise, kids could, just go through the 100+ episodes of what you guys have done and just start piecing things together in a fashion that would be an ontological revolt against their quote unquote book knowledge or K through 12 and then even higher education. So on that sense, Money and Fear really came out of realizing that the numbers, for instance, that the government puts out on core economic fundamentals, this might be just trite for listeners at this point, but it's just not reality. So the way, like, for instance, unemployment, unemployment is well north of 20%. If you're actually counting people with pulses,
But they say that it's down to 4%.
no, for a myriad of
From
strategic.
Barack's 9%.
I mean,
it's
just,
always been
and
over.
it's,
Well, a
look,
lot of
look how
that-
we killed off that almost depression in '08, and we've managed to bring it down to 3.8% or whatever the prior month was. But that's only if you're counting people that are collecting unemployment
Right.
from the government, and thus if you're piecing it together, like most of your listeners and viewers do, and you're sitting there, oh yeah, it's not in the government's incentive system to tell the truth about unemployment or the real inflation rate. They take fuel and food out, and it's like what most people are reliant upon. They take those tactically out, as well as like insurance and education costs and rent. I mean, things where people are just like, that's why the homeless population has grown, is because you can't afford anything, and wage growth hasn't gone anywhere for too many moons. But you turn on CNBC, you turn on Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, LA Times' business section, whatever, and it's just complete hunky-dory as if it's 1999 or even 2004.
Well, let's get into real quick about what is going on in this country. Let's start with this homeless discussion that you're having and the lack of empathy from certain people into this, what is going on. There is a movement from the right to demonize homeless people and to demonize the process in which these guys have ended up on the street. And that process is they're blaming it on socialism. Now, you've seen this video where they're like, look at what socialism gets you in California. And I jump on there all the time. I go, excuse me, California is a state in the United States, and we are a capitalist society. This is a result of capitalism. This is a result of no longer caring about the middle. And the middle is now gone, and now it's become this. There's no safety net at all. It is the grabbing of this incredible amount of greed that is out there. In terms of money that will never be spent in a million years, it's just never enough.
They say that the percentage from 2016 to 2017 was 1% of the American population became homeless. That's 1%. If you extrapolate that out, and we see how fast things happen, it's not just going to be 2% in 2018. It's going to always double, then triple. These things can be like what you do. It's important. When I was telling you before the mics turned on, I'm someone that's not into financial or politics.
No one
but
is.
It's important to be into that. If you're not, it's the idea of.
But Ryan, what do you mean by, like, that's the thing, is
Exactly.
rhetorical question. What do you mean by being into it? There's people in finance that I know, family, friends, otherwise, that are not into finance, that they work in the sector. And that's by design, because what is quote unquote finance and economics? Look, I have 2 degrees, higher ed, graduate. I was finishing, this is motivation wise over the past 18 years. I was finishing my graduate thesis, like dissertation for grad school, and I turned it in, international finance degree, on September 3rd, 2001. Okay, so like a little over a week after that, and I'm just kind of enjoying the next 2 weeks after that in England, before I started planning to head back. And then 9/11 happens, and then really just kind of shoulder rolling from there. I'm just like, what the hell? Like, all this formal education that I had had up until 30, either K through 12, college, grad school, working in between college and grad school, is just like been gradually chipped away as intuition grew over, lies, and a lot of them, and tactically deployed, and so many that the liars themselves like start to lose the sense of the grip over them. And so 500 books later, not kidding, from graduate school's end in 2001, and you're not supposed to read Quigley and Sutton and C. Wright Mills might have been out there, the power elite when you were in high school or whatnot, but reading it critically vis-a-vis, shows like yours or other guidance online or mentors who like pull you aside and they're like, well, this is what it really means.
That's what I was getting to. It's
with
so
esoteric and Gnostic, the stuff that you guys had talked about, it's like roundabout way of saying, like, if you're just going to take finance, economics is not a science. Like, physics, force equals mass times acceleration, that's science. Economics, like long-term yield, trying to quantify human behavior as much as possible is a cult, more so than it is an actual science. And less of a science is economics than sociology, than political philosophy, than history. And thus, economics is purposefully stripped as a academic discipline and within the field of finance from necessary monetary history, from philosophy. It was in the Atlantic a few years ago, some grad student asked Henry Kissinger, of all people, like, how do I get to be you? How do I get to be Henry Kissinger? And Kissinger's answer, just study history and philosophy. And this is the person who more or less spearheaded, I was hearing on one of your shows earlier, not just atrocities in Chile and Cambodia, but the transference from gold standard to the petrodollar standard.
With Nixon.
Yeah, and Bill Simons had a treasury, but it's Kissinger who's more or less in charge because he is the acolyte of the transatlantic establishment, capital E, and not just the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and whatnot, but really money so wealthy, individuals and families and clans so wealthy that they could afford requisite anonymity. So
that's what you always say about the who is it? Our friends at the conspiracy farm. Jeffrey Wilson always talks about, like, if you know their name, they're not the power ones. And that's always been my thought about the Rothschilds, is like, as bad as they are, and they are, I think they use them as the boogeyman.
They're employees. I mean, in a sense.
And it's like these black nobility motherfuckers who've been like bankers since basically the Roman days. But I want to get into something with you is this lack of any kind of interest, back to the walking by the homeless people, but this lack of any interest in like real news, real what's going on, how we've watched this with these kids and these border patrols and the how these power elite people play guitar. They play us like a guitar. They strum us and we wail. And they tell us when to wail. And then they tell us when no longer to wail about that. And it just, you remember when there were Nazis under everybody's bed? Where are the Nazis now? Where are the Nazis? North Korea was going to bomb. And then these blatant lying where it's like, oh, this guy's going to flip on Trump and that guy's going to flip on Trump. And then nobody flips on Trump. And not that Trump's a good guy, but this blatant movement, which is maybe just a theater game being done that Trump is just as Obama, which is, I'm fine with believing in. But
Trump's not in charge of anything.
Okay,
and neither was Obama before him.
Right.
I mean,
so
it's a great little snippet of JFK on YouTube. Very, very bright man, and too bright apparently for the office that he held. Straight up saying, like, there's many that claim that this office that I'm in is really a glorified spokesperson role on behalf of fraternal organizations, which overspoke. And I sense he knew what he was doing. But that's not what the Constitution says, and he's citing his Democratic Party predecessor, Truman. And that's really the last viably independent person within the White House that was Jeffersonian and going off of the textbook case of what you and I learned from whatever 5th grade through 12th grade as far as American civics and history. There's an establishment that runs things. The person who occupies the White House is effectively a representative of that establishment, and it's not simply a domestic establishment. So Trump, in a sense, is celebrating a glorified retirement, personal retirement, in the White House while, having everything prepared for him on a practically daily, if not hourly basis. This is what you say, this is what you do. Meanwhile, the people actually running things on an operational level differ nothing from Obama or Bush 2 prior to him.
That's
or
why
Clinton
they have them both
in
each other's administrations. He was a former blah, blah, blah in this administration. And then when Obama had Bush people in his administration, and people are just like, Nobody seemed to be upset about that because they weren't told to be
because
upset
people's
about that.
your education or excuse for it from primary school on is considered sacred, and so we just had the 4th of July and everyone's out there like by order mandate, cultural mandate, like blowing everything up and celebrating freedom and just literally again frog in a boiling pot of everything that's around you, and yet you're still going to go on with this facade rather than the viable patriotism of like, look, turn everything off and sit and read and be fine in the boredom of what you're reading, but really break through and try and understand things and then piece things together. So people answer your question, like they walk by the homeless, why are they oblivious? Fear. Okay, it's going back to the sense of fear, like half of the title of my show. Fear is an extremely potent, possibly the most potent deployable emotion for the individual, somebody in an abused relationship, or for the collective. It's like Rumsfeld, however many years ago during the Bush II administration, paraphrasing from Machiavelli himself, said it's better to be feared than to be loved. And that's really the MO to proceed with most things. And so what is status anxiety? Like it's like the line in Wall Street 1, how much is enough, Gordon? How many yachts must you jet ski behind? And he comes back with, it's not enough, pal. It's all kind of very shrewdly discussing what is fear. And so when you look at things alchemically, somebody like Ayn Rand, who's like semi-prophet in this hyper-capitalist market fundamentalist post-World War II, wider culture and zeitgeist, what did she do? I mean, she took greed, which any and all greed.
Can you explain to our listeners, because I know who you're talking about, but explain to them who you're discussing.
Ayn Rand?
Yeah.
Ayn Rand was a Russian emigre who, 100 years ago came from Russia through Europe into the United States and was a screenwriter and novelist, but has been donned more or less as philosopher status by her adherents. Who are
the right?
By the cult. Well, some will claim libertarian status, others, Paul Ryan swears by Ayn Rand despite being raised Catholic, maybe because of it. So she was a novelist, but has been kind of put on a pedestal of really just philosopher by those that are Randians or whatever you want to call them. And it's black magic in a lot of ways.
She died broke, right? Like, didn't she die?
Yeah, and that the irony of like people claim that she was sitting there ranting against the welfare state and the private sector and the worshiping of like the alpha male. She'd worship you. The sense that it's like
she wrote the Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged, and then a whole myriad of literature out there that basically it's like if you look at it, she took greed, and any and all greed is backed by fear. All greed is fear. Okay, I was trading commodities several years ago, so our version of Hal Holbrook from Wall Street 1, the trading trainer, John Shannon, he said, we have two emotions that we deal with our clients for trading commodities, greed and fear. So prices are rising, everybody's greedy, they want in. Prices are tanking, everyone's fearful and wants out.
Yeah.
And then he paused because he is like this eccentric guy who studied Buddhism on the side despite his career, and he said, but all greed is fear. And that kind of clicked in me despite training for doing the boiler room stuff that company entailed. And it just furthered my sense of wanting to figure out what's going on there. So Rand, Elisa Rosenbaum, she took greed, which is fear, and flipped it from vice to virtue in this culture. Hence why Paul Ryan and his ilk worship Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
Hence why, regardless of what you study, I'm a brain surgeon, or I'm a commodity trader, or I'm a radio host or whatever. It's like if you kind of swear by Rand, or at least kind of tip your hat off, you're giving the indication that you're on board the train. That this is the way to kind of go about thinking is the survival of the fittest mentality. This kind of neo-Darwinian sense of you're either making it or you're not, without any sense of ceiling to it. So it's never enough. Hence,
it's never enough.
So you have a $30 million house on the cliffs in Laguna Beach or Malibu or whatnot, and yet you still have what's his face across the lagoon or across the cliff, who's doing an add-on. The hell's going on there?
Yeah.
Or just like micro, it's like I have the Benz and I like it, but how did this dude have? What's he doing that he's got 2 Teslas now? It's not enough to just have the S. Now he's got the state. So it's always working away the status anxiety because it's never enough. And it's the second Wall Street from 2010 where the greed is good equivalent for me was Michael Douglas to Shia LaBeouf says, see, it's that's what you never got, kid. It's not about the money. It's about the game between people, and that's all it is.
Dude, we did a podcast on that. Remember? It's like you find success when you figure out the game that's being played, the game between men and women. When the guy figures out what women like, he figures out the game, and he gets the women. And when you figure out how, like I have friends of mine, I won't say their name, that are extremely successful in this town because these people figured out the game. Mm-hmm. Now I know the game, and I just hate the game.
What is the game?
The game is virtual signaling, playing to the game, nothing dangerous, unless it's acceptable dangerous. Okay, and they break it down, and it's all virtual signaling. It's all social engineering. People hate when I say that over again, but it is at the highest level social engineering, man. Down to basically designed race wars we have. Where when you really look into it, nobody talks. Let's take the Charleston, the big neo-Nazi Charleston. Well, it turns out this guy was actually part of the whole Operation Wall Street stuff. And at the time, I thought that was an amazing thing. But now I'm starting to realize that maybe that was a social engineered event to get people to fight with each other.
Occupy Wall Street?
Wall Street and stuff like that.
And notice how it just kind of went away almost like in an afternoon
or a weekend. And it's just like, oh, we're done. Yeah. And now everybody goes. And you're like, that is so contrived. And and this guy was on both sides of those. He worked for the Occupy Wall Street people. And then he organized the neo-Nazi walk where I don't like Nazis, but I've seen these guys, these rednecks before, and they don't show up in khaki pants and tiki torches with perfectly groomed hair. They don't. They have leather, fucking this and that, and they're carrying Confederate flags or Nazis. It's so contrived. And when the news picks something up and it's everywhere, question the fuck out of it. That's what I gotta say. But what I don't understand is how nobody sees what's coming, and that is this crash that's going on, and nobody cares because they just have. I want to get into a couple of things. In this town, this virtual signaling, I understand why there's some people who don't want to say anything dangerous, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, on their podcasts, and their jokes, because to make it in this town, you have to have anonymous people greenlight you. And you just never know when you might run into somebody with a bug in their ass and they didn't like your shoes or they didn't like a tweet and they just use that for a reason for you not to get this job. So this whole thing is like you have to act like you play ball, which is this fucking democratic lapdog bullshit that goes out here where like Obama separating kids at 60,000 over 8 years complaints doesn't mean anything because they didn't tell you that. But now this has come up when a year and a half into Trump's administration, and now this is a big event. And whether Trump and Obama are different, but it's like, why is this upsetting? Why are people pooing on pedogate and like, oh, these crazy conspiracy guys? Yet, boom, dude, kids in cages. All of a sudden, it's the end of the fucking year. And it's like it's all be orchestrated. And over time, as we pull out jobs and we people call socialism redistribution of the wealth. And I'd love to hear your take on that. But, capitalism. Let's look at capitalism, dude. Where's the middle class right now? Right now in the United States, in Europe, they're fucking gone because all the jobs went down to South America and to China. And guess what that is to me? Redistribution of the wealth.
Well, there's socialism within very high levels of capitalism.
For sure, and they don't see
like,
that.
The head of Tesla and other hyper billionaires that kind of get these consistent never-ending, or just subsidies from the government and whatnot. It's like if it's genuinely a quote-unquote free market in the genuine like kind of libertarian sense, then stuff would be failing left and right. The other thing that I've noticed, and it's less and less controversial of a claim, is markets are rigged. I mean, that's not
That's
not tinfoil hat. It's like it's everything from okay, so '08 we've never fully recovered from the 2008 financial crisis, neither by the measurements that I mentioned earlier as far as unemployment and inflation, the metrics, participation rate, no wage growth and whatnot, but just, the wider sense of production. It's not pre-08. It's not, dot-com bubble bursting, which some argue that's really when the kickoff happened, was when, 2001, the dot-com bursting happened. So it's what was I saying? It's a perception issue, and we never fully got out of the '08 crisis, and yet everything is sold as if it's perennial prosperity because so much relies upon our dollar as the global reserve currency, our bonds as the core, thing to hold as far as investments overseas, and so the facade must be maintained at all times, regardless of the reality. Hence why you have very high real unemployment. But you're using different metrics, and those old metrics like from the '70s don't really count.
Right.
In '94 it shifted because of
Move
the internet.
the shells.
So
Move
it's three.
the shells.
So it begs the question over if you're a sentient being and able to actually put a string together and like gauge a sense of what's actually off. But because of the fear, it's like I was working at a real estate investment trust 2004 through 2006, and I'm reading contrarian authors, Richard Duncan, James Turk, Robert Prechter, these guys writing books about the fundamentals of the economy just being tweaked. The economy is just, this is a make real, this is make
theater.
believe. This is make believe. And I'm in corporate, so I purposely wore this novice shirt today.
You look great, dude.
Instead
Blue's
of
my favorite color.
Instead of my minor threat T-shirt, I wore this just to kind of make the point. But I'm kind of being
You look more
semi-loud.
professional.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I like
it's
it.
out of respect to you,
Yeah.
gentlemen. But I'm sitting there at this firm like 14 years ago. It's like, I just read this thing, and the number of acts, and and people are like, that's fun, but can you stay on the page? There's no need to be pessimistic when we're actually we're killing it. And this is like a souped-up mortgage firm. Alt-A, eventually they get into subprime, making literally slaughtering. And who are they dealing with? Who are they selling and doing deals with? Bear Stearns, the usual suspects in New York. So the heads of the firm would tout, "Oh, I'm going to New York. Oh, we're going to pitch again." But I'm sitting there reading stuff from people that are like, sitting there going, "This is unsustainable." So where did that firm go during and after the '08 crisis, from like 800 people down to like 40? And the friends that I did have there, I wish you were still around, Pye, because you were unpopular when you were crowing during the good times. But yeah, I mean, it's like everyone, and it's like the head of Citigroup said this when they were questioning him during like congressional testimony. He's like, look, when the music's playing, you have to get up and dance. So he's using the metaphor of like you can't just be at the party and just off to the corner. You have to be involved, and that's really like it's prescribed groupthink throughout all of finance and so much of like corporate life. It's like you don't want to be a stick in the mud. And I'm sitting there going like, just not being pessimistic just to kind of look cool, because you don't anyway.
Yeah.
Like the best form of optimism is an informed optimism. So it's like if you're going to just drive without a map, you'd be optimistic that you'll get to your destination, but you're going to go off a bridge. It's like if you have to have a sense of direction, you have to go off of history, recent history, not ancient history, to get a sense of where things potentially may go. So to answer your question, when is the crash? If I could claim, like, I wrote a 47-piece thing in mid-2007 saying things look fairly imminent, and I gave it to the firm that I worked for after the real estate investment trust. It was in the sustainability sector, a very bright head of the firm, had 2 PhDs, and nonetheless came into the room one day. He's like, thanks for this deliverable, Pye. So wait, the economy's going to tank, but our green sector is just going to keep rising, right? And he's wanting me to finish this sentence. He's like, it's the same motivation. It's a very, very bright man.
Right.
PhDs, Harvey Mudd and whatnot. But nonetheless, he's like,
trying to find a green light.
I want to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So I don't want this pessimism that you just dished out to senior management to be. So they ended up getting sold, and it's people like there's a sense of like there's a prescribed sense of optimism
Yeah.
that is detached from critical inquiry, which begs the question over what the point of any education on a formal sense is. If it's suppressing your intuition, the kid who's playing as a toddler in the grass and just discovering what grass is and just shapes and how that's beaten out of you in order to be able to conform to a sense of how to get ahead, how to survive. And that formula is less and less sustainable just by nature of, like, look around you. I mean, look, you cannot ignore, like, just one afternoon news piece, local news, okay? And any local, you could be in Pittsburgh listening to this. Your local news is going to,
Shout out Pittsburgh.
Shout out to Pittsburgh. But, you know, it's like, okay, the unemployment rate, another fantastic set of numbers coming in from the Fed and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we'll go to that with our, you know, right afterwards, like the number of homeless in the city. Just LA local news is just literally, like, it's literally that news or just on NPR, which is just atrocious excuse.
Yeah, nobody wants to believe that either.
It's like no one. It's like, why wouldn't you think? Like, why are there so many homeless? So, where you guys were talking about earlier, like, the assignment is that these are lazy people.
Yep,
because
drug addicts.
It has to fit into that Randian sense of, you know, you have to work your tail off to be successful, and there's a survival of the fittest law, so that, you know, if you're not going to cut it, then, you know, you're basically dirt.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, yeah.
Well, I think it's fascinating. Alexander Hamilton called it's the grand experiment, America. And I'm just wondering, we've seen the collapse. We've seen a crash, if you will, in the 20s. When we see signs that it's happening towards the future. And what I was trying to originally get to was saying that I think what you do is consume things on your podcast and able to regurgitate it out for me to be able to understand. And I recently heard Jordan Peterson talk about what podcasting and this technology is doing. It's like the printing press, but it's allowing people, now they can read. And now beyond, if now people can read, they can get info. Well, now if people can just listen, now they can get way, way more. So until they shut off the Wi-Fi, I feel like what you're doing is so much mirroring what we're doing, which is just trying to get the real info out, and you figure out what
trying
you want.
to make it palatable.
Yeah.
The revolution will be podcasted. That is the most truest sense ever. It's basically what Jordan Peterson said. That, like, podcasting is changing the way people get information, and it is waking people up. Whether you like Alex Jones or not, and you could have your own thing. I disagree with him on some stuff. You know, a broken clock's right twice a day. So he's right on some stuff, and he's not. But who's right 100% of the time? Nobody. But people are getting information that the elites never wanted them to get before. But I want to get into something real quick with you about money and how I saw a statistic which said that 20% of the world's wealth is actual tangible money, like I can hold. This is actually.
And I commend you for past shows, by the way, getting into gold and
well, it's
stuff.
just gold.
You're obviously
gold,
well read
right?
enough to where you kind of know that stuff, as well as the oil and petrodollar. And
So my whole theory is like, it's such a diabolical game these elites are playing, even to the point where it's like, okay, feminism is fine. I respect women's right to have when you find out that what's her face, the Gloria Steinem is like a CIA asset and
kind
stuff
of dated
like that.
Kissinger at some point as well.
Right. So we're seeing like there's and like feminism. 100. If whoever you, man, woman, trans, whatever you are, you have equal rights to everything. That's all I'm talking about. But when we see there's a CIA asset in this movement, it's like, what is the diabolical decisions back here? So we see this movement to free trade, jobs go everywhere. Both families, parents have to work. It's like you are spread out. Get married, have kids. Everybody's got a job. Now you don't have time to do the investigating, and I have to turn on this hour to find out what's going on.
Literally weekly to me by friends that I grew up with that are middle-aged. Like, Pye, this is great. Look, I'm busy enough, Pye, with just, painting the picket fences in the morning, my kid's karate class. Hell, looking over my back at work because everyone's a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the extent of my politics. How am I gonna then sweat about what's happening in Yemen, or if the Fed is, or if the
Unbelievable.
Fed is lying. Everyone's so tightly wound.
It's done on purpose.
And just like, I just want to hold on to what I have.
Yep.
That I literally cannot afford the energy to get into the esoterica of why finance is taught as a liar. Why, I can't even deal with it. I'm sure there's people out there on the fringe, but I just kind of want to go along to get along.
Yeah.
When I
And
ask people if you're religious and they say no, I'm like, okay, so you have a bank, right? I'm like, you know, the word money comes from like, what is it? Monete, which is Latin for, means mint. It goes back to Juno, the goddess. So you're worshiping a god that's literally the term money. And like you say, we're either in fear of our gods or we're in love with them. And when you're Mr. Wall Street and you're rocking the suit, you're in love with it. But when you're Mr. Skid Row, your God is consuming you, like the way in the Hindu culture, into the mouth of Kali, all things must
I
go.
saw a homeless guy on Santa Monica Boulevard with a sign that made me triple take and almost hit the car in front of me. And his sign, typical kind of homeless guy sign, he said, quote, homeless is a spiritual journey. And that might sound sappy, but I sat there and thought, because I obviously didn't know the guy and don't even know if he wrote that. But it's in the sense of like, I don't have to try as hard as the guy in the tower who, I'm in front of the tower panhandling, but the dudes that are like, trying to jockey for position,
Yep.
they have different. I'm not advising that people go homeless.
Right. But there is
there's
a off the grid
But
type
he's
sense.
divorced from the sense of fear.
Yeah.
And so I can't claim that I'll know, like, oh, the correction that you're talking about, the crash, that's like in 6 weeks, 6.5 weeks. There's no way.
Yeah.
The
But-
crash will happen when they want to happen.
And
I-
that's, you're
but let me just
you're
ask you
nailing
this
it,
question.
yeah.
So 20% of the actual wealth in the world
Yeah.
is tangible, actual wealth, meaning there is backed by gold.
Hard
There's
assets.
Hard assets. Meaning 80% of it, I don't want to say it's paper money because paper money is paper, but it's stat sheet money, let's say.
Ones and zeros.
Okay, so what if the long game is here is get everybody fat in these countries on ones and zeros? So you have these
not
people.
what if it is.
So
it's been-
Shaq's driving around on these fat cars and that, and it's like, well, you don't actually have that much money in gold, Shaq. You have, and I have nothing against Shaq. I'm just thinking somebody who's got this wealth in this kind of a economy. Like, the people who are pulling strings have the 20% of the wealth, the actual tangible wealth. Everybody else is like the emperor's new clothes wealth, right? So it's so easy just to eventually pull that cord and that all crashes. And that's what it does. So that what happens is the 20%, they pull their money out, done purposefully. Very famous, how did the Rothschilds make their money? Lied about the bonds in England, that England lost the war. Everybody sells, they still have their cash. They buy all the bonds, now they own England.
And, there's technical terms, front running, and there are various terms that are taught when you're studying, when you're taking your exams for the licensing to go sell stocks or to investment banking or whatever, that piece of history you're told not to do. And yet when you look at monetary history, it's like, okay, these are the rules and this is how I got through the hoop of getting my licenses to actually trade. But then on a different level, it's like those are the rules that are given for knowing how to go around them. And everybody else is a quote-unquote muppet. It's like the City of London finance reference to just like the unwashed masses that are just clueless and are there by necessity for us to be able to pillage. So yes, hard assets, gold has always been money and it always will be. J.P. Morgan himself said, gold is money, money is gold, and all else is credit. And thus you see why we went off the gold standard in 71 is because it was an effective default on the part of the U.S. government in the Bretton Woods arrangement. Like you could exchange paper money for gold post-World War II until you couldn't, until the French were like, de Gaulle's like, where's our gold? Oh, we need Vietnam to actually be a success. And, the social programs that President Johnson's put forward, they're going to require much more money, quote unquote, than there is physical gold. And so, yeah, we're going to close that gold window because it's our way or the highway. Literally, it's our way or the Soviet way. France and England and Germany and Switzerland and everybody else. So, and then, not coincidentally arranging for the petrodollar arrangement a couple of years later, as you had, astutely pointed out in an earlier show, it's like when you have that commodity, which is not as limited as physical gold is.
Right.
And then even then some, like, the bits and bytes, the zeros and ones, even that hasn't been enough, since 71 as far as printing money. Because at this point, you see a graduation into the fintech horizon involving Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the means of just literally conjuring not just paper money out of thin air, but defining money however you will, with the libertarian dressing on it, namely that it's actually, this is very true.
Dude, I love this.
We're divorcing from the central banking mechanisms of the world, vis-a-vis this blockchain and these the means of money that is.
So you're pro Bitcoin?
No, I'm very critical.
Yeah, I am.
I'm very
too.
because, like, look, is it a coincidence? First of all, an esoteric, there is no such thing as a coincidence, as any kind of Kabbalistic metaphysician will mention to you. And so
great.
and yet, when did Bitcoin come about, or when did it go public, or when did it
Who made
seep
it? Nobody
into the consciousness? 2009, right in the dead set middle of the financial crisis, which then you're sitting there, you're like, was the crisis itself basically like a controlled demolition of sorts? 4 hedge funds went under like mid 2007, but things have crashed before. Why then was there a domino effect? Bear Stearns, that was absorbed through the '08 crisis, their stock went from like $80 a share to like $2 a share in like a weekend. Is that supply and demand, or is that a bunch of guys sitting there with like a joystick or pressing a bunch of keys?
Dude, it's all fake.
So
It's the long game.
there was like a culling sense, consolidation, and the controlled demolition to basically cull a series of banks for a whole variety of purposes. Disclosure, Lehman Brothers didn't participate in the long-term capital management bailout of 10 years earlier, and hence this fraternity, did the equivalent of the soap party on Vincent D'Onofrio and Full Metal Jacket, like hitting him with soap.
Yeah.
Like Lehman was the soap equivalent, or the Gomer Pyle equivalent. With, and it's like, that guy's got to go, and so
they sacrificed
They take
him, right?
Lehman out.
Yeah.
And and it's like, so it was a sense of, was that accidental that the '08 crisis came about? Not necessarily. Will the next, the second leg dropping to the '08 crisis, will that necessarily be accidental? These people think long term.
Yeah, dude.
You can't have a dollar like 1913 Federal Reserve. You take over the means of just what money even means, but that this currency that you're operating with at some point is going to become like this dirty used dish rag, and you're going to have to replace it with something else. So I doubt that the introduction of cryptocurrencies in general, let alone Bitcoin, is kind of the flagship to kind of test it. And they pump the price from 800,
and then they knock it down. Nobody knows.
$900
Real quick,
up to $20,000. That's not supply and demand either. They're pumping it in order to draw attention and in order to get speculators to be aware of it.
if you put the dollar on oil, there's unlimited amount of oil. You can print unlimited amount of funny money. So don't think of the U.S. dollar, let's say, as an actual dollar. Let's think about it as monopoly money, right? So now you're going around the world and you're bribing everybody with this monopoly money. You are literally making fake money and bribing them to pass these laws.
It's a confidence trick, because what are you going to do? The dollar is the core means of exchange for now.
Oh,
So
yeah, for sure.
Take these suitcases full of cash,
Yeah,
and live
it's fake
comfortably.
money.
Everyone's got a price.
Yeah.
And what's yours? It's like,
They bought everything and they changed the rules of how we operate with each other based on fake money that they made up out of nowhere.
but what is money? What is it? Meaning, what does it dictate within you? It controls fear better than the threat of death itself.
Right.
Not for everyone. But certain people have a certain code of faith and honor and epistemology. But otherwise, everyone's concerned about not having enough. Some having too much. What do I do with it? How do I tactically deploy it to be playing my game? Gates, all of a sudden, this like philanthropist, giving away his billions because he's part of a game at a different level than the schmo than the schmo living down the street from you.
Yeah.
So it's how are they able to do that? And what are the stakes now where potentially the Far East is trying to strip the monopoly basis of pricing, trading, and recycling of money with regard to oil pricing and trading, trying to take that crown away from the dollar with the petro yuan or the
Then
petro
China's
ruble.
doing that as well.
They're trying.
It all comes back to nerds. I mean, when we really think about it, and I mean that in the nicest way. The reason we're on oil and petrodollars because we need to make tiny little explosions so we move our engines. We have the ability to have cold fusion, so we could have free energy. We then now remove the ability.
Who's we?
Humanity. All of humanity should have free energy by 2020. We have those technologies. We even have like air compressed engines that can operate a vehicle and it has zero emissions. So we have green technologies, but none of these things are going to be employed because the end all is for us to be enslaved globally. Like we always talk about a one world order. And when I think about Bitcoin, is this the one world currency? Is this the one world?
It's like a floater balloon towards it.
Well, he talks about like, what happens when the internet goes off. There's a famous story that just came out like within a month or two of a man who lost his laptop, and now he literally can't access millions of dollars in
just this.
Gone.
I mean, this is like my third arm in a lot of ways. It's more important than the wallet in my pocket. Like if someone's smartphone's missing, the psychological impact that is on them is like worse than a purse missing, and that's been conditioned over just fairly acute amount of time. So I mean, Bitcoin, cryptos are a means of getting to the point where forget the internet being taken out. If you're misbehaving enough, Mr. Sam Tripoli, then your economic existence will be turned off.
Yep.
Because whatever 10, 15 years from now, whether you're chipped or otherwise, it's your means of consumption is tied to bits and bytes or zeros and ones somewhere. So you see China already experimenting on the state level with tracking, their populace and and people having like ratings for their behavior or whatnot. And it's like it's getting to the and so what is money? And this really kind of ties other episodes that your blessed show has covered over years.
Thank you, Pye. Thank you.
You have to,
Aaron.
You have to be able to, and I noticed you have to be able to connect, for lack of a less trite phrase, connect dots with regard to money on an esoteric level, as far as what it is meant to achieve. Not just the bills in your pocket, but the meaning of worth. And money is energy. It's the most efficient means of human energy. It's like that's all fine and good, but money, BS talks, money talks, BS walks. So meaning like, what did your effort, what did your labor actually achieve in a tangible, measurable sense, namely money? And so the more trackable the money gets, namely digital, crypto, and then the more you can be tracked.
They're like, this guy's spending way too much money on Pornhub premium content.
Whatever.
You know?
I wonder how many conversations the dollar bill itself has sprung with conspiracy theorists being super stoned and just being like, hey, man, you see this little thing? It's a spider. No, it's an owl. And then next thing you know, it's like, why is this dollar bill not changed?
Yeah.
Who created it?
Yeah.
Who's Nicholas Rowick? Why is the Federal Reserve this? And it, like you say, it's a starting point for people that don't wear tinfoil hats to understand that somewhere deep inside, money.
It's a long game.
I love your show, and
thank you,
and
Aaron.
the title of the show and everything. But tinfoil hat, and I know it's tongue in cheek, but conspiracy theory, I don't need to tell you guys, is a deployed phrase from government intelligence.
JFK.
But just to have legs, if you will. So thus, anything that is not unofficially prescribed information should go under this category
Gets
of
demonized.
lug nut theory or excessive.
People now use conspiracy theory to explain or dismiss things they've done no research on. Mm-hmm. So you're like, hey man, we did a coup in Iran in 50. Conspiracy theory. You're like, no, you don't know it.
The head of my network is just today, Newsbug put out a piece about the next 6 months, and a reprise of the 53 coup is literally in motion right now. The government is trying to mobilize forces within the Iranian military what I said earlier, everyone's got a price. So that was the offer to them, is like, why don't we buy you and your loyalty and then save your country from catastrophe? Oh, and by the way, after the coup, you'll be positioned in very keen positions.
With fake money.
Whatever, with fake money. And it's like, that's literally it's in the works. It's in the work. 2 years ago, they tried it with Turkey. Didn't necessarily go as planned. Right now, they're in the process of literally planning it over the next half a year with Iran. But how many other, it's endless numbers of nations where traders have prices that they're willing to advertise because, as they say, like money talks. So if everyone's starving within this country, and yet someone pulls me over and says, here's your net worth in a year and a half if you cooperate, then it's, I got kids that are starving or whatever. It's like, so it dictates human behavior vis-a-vis fear better than most things.
I want to get into something real quick with you because it's always this theory I have. Now, when a country goes socialist, with the exception of England, because I think England and the United States, we've had podcasts before where we talked about Lost Tribes of Israel versus pagans, and we kind of see that starting to play out right now with Germany sending, or supposedly sending money. We don't know if it's real or not, $600 million or $600 billion to Iran, and that's what's going to be Lost Tribes versus the pagans. But mostly when we see socialist countries start to fall, or they're trying to get off the U.S. petrodollar, and they start to fall, and everyone's like, look, failed state. But what they don't want to talk about is that purposefully the United States puts trade embargoes on them and makes it so impossible for that system to survive, because everything is based off the United States and our market, our purchasing power. If we weren't
currency
that,
itself, the dollar itself means you could attack another country's currency, whether it's the Venezuelan bolivar or the Turkish lira or the Iranian rial, Russia's rubles, because the dollar, to a certain extent, because the dollar is the reserve currency, post-World War II reserve currency, and is most efficient for purposes of trade, investment, certainly most important commodities priced and traded. And so when you're working off of the dollar, then it's easy to just, poke away. So your coup didn't work, but that's fine. We'll go ahead and just trash their economy through much very tacit means. And hence you see like Turkey's currency like start to tweak. And people internal to Turkey, it's like there's no plausible reason why this should be happening. Of course, it's because the money system is tighter, more digital, more centralized, and certainly not any kind of free market scenario. So that's all for outside consumption, for motivation purposes, free market capitalism, market fundamentalism. It's all very kind of controlled and vertically integrated. And the other thought, it's like, to be too cryptic on your show, but it's like when everyone is controlled via money, in the sense of like money dictating your behavior and your motivation and your energy level and your output. So the individual can be turned off if they're really misbehaving, so that you have nothing. Sorry, Mr. Smith, you have nothing in your account.
Yeah.
Not even for a Biox. Like, I just want to no, done. So one person, the collective, that wayward cult, that nation, and you gentlemen are no strangers to population reduction in the inevitable sense of like planning. We can't be on this 7 billion towards 10 billion people on the planet scenario over the next decade. This needs to reverse. We need to take out as many as possible, as efficiently as possible. And in a sense, like a thought that I had was, money may be more effective in doing that just by tactical starvation measures, by turning everybody's things off in a certain region, than past Byzantine, very cryptic, very bloody pogrom and Holocaust level means of population reduction. So do you necessarily need gas chambers when you can, what was happening in India within the past 2 years as far as this abrupt shift? I did one of my shows on money going, forcing digital cash and doing away with physical cash as much as possible. And,
Yeah.
you know, the Indian government just like, okay, by the way, these very common notes were done. They're not going to be, and most Indians work with physical money,
Yeah.
paper money, and they couldn't. So people are killing themselves, and there's just like mayhem in the streets, simply because of like somebody clicked a switch and said, we're not going to be printing these two leading, like imagine with us like a $20 bill and a $100 bill or whatever. So you don't have to be a drug dealer, you know, going from, you know, Latin America into Florida with suitcase, you know, the trite image of the you know, what are you using these $100 bills for? Although that's the premise under which they'll be doing away with the $100 bill presumably here as well. It's like they use it for trade. You know, it's like, but let's push as aggressively as possible to get everybody on mobile phones and money by a digital means. And Gates is actually Bill Gates is kind of leading the charge here.
He keeps talking about mass famine, some disease. It's going to kill 30 million people.
Malaria, I believe.
So like, you know,
my
dealing with
God.
diseases, population issues on the global basis, and he's hyper amped and as is his foundation about digital cash. It's like, are these related in any sense, or am I like overthinking? Yeah, I'm willing to be corrected as long as people just don't throw the pen and say, you know, flat earther, or you're dumb, or you're overreaching, because, you know, there's a whole series of things that can be cited at this point.
So if digital currency and the technology, if you will, is just technology, and we don't look at it for positive or negative, much like the wheel, like one day a guy made a wheel and he was like, one day everyone's going to use this in every country and it's going to make the world better.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, but what about the guy that walks the stones from the river up the mountain? He's going to be out of a job. Like, well, it's technology, man. Extrapolate that forward. The Luddites during the Industrial Revolution that went into the machine shops and smashed up all the looms because they were losing their jobs. Nowadays, the neo-Luddites, people like me and Ted Kaczynski, if you read portions of his like
Weird crew, bro.
his
That's a weird
manifesto,
crew.
he was basically saying is we're moving towards automation, but it's inevitable, it seems like. So wouldn't it make sense that eventually we will be a one world government? Whether it is nefarious, what if the one world government 300, 400 years from now is the only religion is love? Unfortunately, the portal we had to go through like hell to get there. I'd like to think there's some part of me like maybe at the very tip of this crazy elite, there's some crazy Duncan Trussell, peaceful hippie that's like, hey man, this has got to happen, you know? So,
Well, I don't know if you get to that level if you show that kind of compassion. They're very specific on how you get there. That's that whole.
So, I mean, yeah, we are moving towards it.
well, common
it's-
misconception is that even evil people can get the blessings of gods. So the idea that we've been talking about, this knowledge, gnosis,
Mm-hmm.
this is just all knowledge, the knowledge that eventually not human experiment, but the American experiment is going to either fail or succeed, but
And what was the American experiment?
attempt
Was-
to do something different, right? Like we left Europe and we left everything
Or
behind.
to serve as a catalyst towards this inevitable world government basis.
Yeah, if it's a long game and we're talking, you know, lost tribes versus pagans, this was all part of the plan. I mean, there are people who are very powerful, have been playing this game for a long time, that have enough power and money to force certain scenarios to happen.
How wide of a Hegelian dialectic can you conceive of? Wide meaning, you know, in the time spans. And, you know, do they necessarily need to involve like just a few decades, or can they spread out over multiple centuries? If you study like Karl Marx, like swore by Hegel, he relied on, but the way that either Hegel or Marx are taught in what I call retail philosophy, namely the Barnes and Noble that you go to and you see the philosophy section, or, you know, your typical collegiate philosophy, it's exoteric. It's not esoteric. So there's a book by Glenn Maggie. It was an English academic, and it was published by Cornell Press on Hegel and Hermeticism. And it's just like I wonder like how it even got published, because it's talking about Hegel on those other layers.
Magical. Interesting.
And just, you look at and the whole PDF is online, actually, for those listening. If you put Hegel Hermeticism PDF into Google, you'll have it come up, and just you read it, but look at the table of contents and on Hegel, hundreds of years ago, getting into Kabbalistic metaphysics. Like, where was that within the discussion of Hegel at the collegiate level? Maybe some very kind of forward-looking, and that kind of, like, to then me 15 years ago reading about, like, Leo Strauss is like the godfather of the neoconservatives, but then Strauss would teach people at University of Chicago in an esoteric fashion or otherwise, and stuff back then, like early 30s, I was just like, what is esoteric versus and then eventually resenting the surface level retail political science and political philosophy that I was taught, and realizing, no, there's layers of knowledge that if you have the nuance, you have the background, then you're able to read Hegel or Marx or these others in a different fashion.
So
and you see
incredible.
like the dialectic is very kind of long term.
And to bring it full circle, since we were talking about collapse and Ayn Rand, there's a quote from her: "We can evade reality, but we cannot evade the consequences of evading reality."
That's a great quote from a crazy lady. What a great quote
Should
that
we find
is,
out what he
right?
thinks?
You can act like something's not going to go down. I mean, that's a great way of basically defining denial.
Aaron?
You know?
Aaron.
Don't be an idiot.
Hey, Ron. Well, you better be sick, dead, or mute. Hey, Ron. You done messed up, hey, Ron.
You filthy animal.
Aaron, thoughts?
Well, this has been incredibly fascinating. I do worry about the financial markets and stuff like that. I mean, ever since 2008, they've been saying, the economy's going up and up and up, but, wages and all that shit hasn't, despite the cost of living rises. So it is very interesting and crazy and scary.
You worried about your children's future?
Of course.
He doesn't.
Worried
He's
about my
trying.
own.
He's trying so hard to get that lady to put out a kid.
Well,
He's trying.
we're working on it.
I think you should let us watch and maybe give some tips on
could.
how to make it happen.
It couldn't hurt.
Figure, where were you 11 years ago, Aaron? 07, 08, and if you had to do it again, what would you do differently from then? And then that would provide, and for any of us really, and for listeners, that would provide a germ of motivation for how to look at this without like just abject despair. Just plan.
Yeah.
Know more than the other person. Know as much as you can, and plan with that information.
Learn to hunt. Learn to karate. Learn how to make clean water. And buy gold, and you'll be fine.
I also like that we found the one guy who saw Wall Street 2, Money Never Sleeps.
Great film. Great film, and it's a series of those films. Moneyball, obviously, which you've referenced before, but then Boiler Room, which was Giovanni Ribisi.
Yeah.
I mean, that was quoted within the literal boiler room that I worked in like 8 years ago.
Oh my
And
God.
it's, each one of these films were made. The filmmaker made them as warnings,
Yeah.
and had people within industry like swear by the lines within them as motivation for being the antagonist within the film.
Monkey see, monkey
I
do,
picture
dude.
Dick
Yeah.
Cheney with like 1984, and he's like, "Guys, I got it. It's right here."
That guy, how that guy still walks the earth is unbelievable. Well, I hope that, I mean, like, I know sometimes, this is a comedy podcast, and sometimes we go into some stuff that makes you guys go, what the fuck? Knowledge is power, dude. Knowledge is power. And I think it's important to know these stuff. And I think it's important to, like, take a moment and, bring some people in to listen to these things. Tell a friend who gets it, because the more knowledge is out there, the more maybe we might be able to plan. Or just start taking those karate classes and those with the bow hunting and the learning how to purify water. And let's get some gold, man. If you got gold you want me to buy it, hit me up. Cash. I got to start those cash for gold things, dude.
Yeah, Pye, tell them where they can find all your social media and your podcasts, everything.
Just newsbud.com. We are.
Is it independently sourced?
And yeah, there's no money from corporations or
I love it,
from
dude.
the Soros type people or whatnot. It's all kind of just folks online subscribing or buying one-off episodes on Vimeo or whatnot. And the owner and main editor Sibel Edmonds wants to keep it like that because you're removing incentives that even Pacific or seemingly progressive news media has, because you don't have influencers from government or from corporations telling you. And so people will be like, okay, yeah, but then anybody could set up their own network and claim that they're a journalist. It's like there's also the rigor, or the sense of like, I've studied this much in order to then, like, with ceaseless abandon, attack us. Yeah, I print out 50 to 100 pages every 2 weeks.
Jeez.
And coupled with the text that I have in order to delve into the subject, the subject that I will then produce the 20 minutes to 45-minute episode.
I love it, dude.
on. And that's
you're doing the Lord's work, homeboy.
I owe it to myself as well as to people that may not find what CNBC is discussing as the abject truth. So
I'm gonna send my girlfriend to start checking that out. She loves watching MSNBC, and it's killing me. I love you, Pye Ian. You're a fucking G, dude. You need to come back more often. I would love to have you be on here once every month, once every 2 months. We'll work it out.
You guys rule.
Ryan, you're a G, dude.
Skankfest, NYC, baby.
Aaron, we broke in a little bit. We're starting to get in that skull of yours, bro. We're starting to get... Aaron, you know what you were? You were like the dog when I took the blanket, I threw it up, and I disappeared, and I skull fucked you right there. You had a great show, man. Today was a victory for the truth seekers, dude. We got the Aaron. Aaron's waking up, bro.
5-star reviews, Patreon. Check
Let's
out
watch you guys have sex. All right, guys, you guys are great. Have a great night. We'll see you on the next episode of Tinfoil Hat. Holla at your boy.